There are days when heaven whispers into the corridors of time, and October 14 is one of them. It is not an ordinary day, for it carries the fragrance of eternity, the pulse of divine promise, and the tender stirring of something sacred that has long been in the making. God says, "Prepare for divine marriage," not as a mere earthly bond, but as a covenant born of his own design, written in the quiet ink of providence. For every soul that has wandered through the wilderness of waiting, this is the day heaven extends a hand, not to rush you, but to ready you. For marriage, in the divine sense, is not a contract of convenience, but the merging of two purposes beneath the gaze of God. It is not the hurried union of need, but the slow unfolding of destiny. You must understand that divine timing is a mystery. It moves not by the clock of the impatient, but by the rhythm of grace. There are seasons when heaven withholds what you think you're ready for, because your heart is still being molded for what your soul must sustain. God does not unite two people merely because they desire one another. He unites them because together they can bear the weight of a greater calling. The divine marriage is not for the faint-hearted. It is for those who have learned the art of surrender. To prepare is not to dress your body in wedding garments, but to clothe your spirit in obedience, humility, and faith. When God says, "Prepare," he speaks not of haste but of holiness. He calls you to refine your heart, to forgive the wounds that still whisper of yesterday, to release the shadows that you've kept company with for too long. The divine marriage cannot bloom in soil where bitterness grows. You must till your inner ground, uproot the weeds of pride, and let the rain of grace soften what has hardened. Many pray for love, yet few prepare for it. They wish for companionship but neglect the cleansing that must precede divine union. For love that is holy cannot dwell where self still reigns supreme. It is a gift given to those who have first laid their hearts upon the altar and said, "Lord, not my will, but yours be done." October 14 is a summons. Heaven is not announcing a wedding date, but issuing a divine invitation to be purified, transformed, and prepared. Some will sense this in the stirring of their spirit, an unexplainable anticipation, as if something eternal is leaning closer. You may feel the gentle conviction to let go of what has delayed your readiness, the fear of being alone, the bitterness of betrayal, the wounds of unhealed seasons. For in divine preparation, God does not ask you to perfect yourself. He asks you to yield. The miracle of divine marriage is not born in your effort, but in your surrender. The love that God ordains is not fleeting, it is rooted in covenant. It is the reflection of his own faithfulness, the echo of Eden before the fall, the return of the sacred vow where two become one not just in affection, but in mission. The divine marriage is a mirror of Christ and his bride, a living parable of grace woven in flesh. And so, to prepare is to become a vessel that can carry that glory without breaking. It is to let patience do its perfect work, so that when the appointed moment comes, your love is not fragile, but eternal. Heaven's call is clear: purify your desires, align your purpose, and guard your heart from imitation loves that glitter, but do not glow. There are unions that distract, and there are unions that build kingdoms. The divine marriage belongs to the latter. It is not born from attraction alone, but from assignment. God will not join you to someone who satisfies your loneliness. He will join you to someone who multiplies your purpose. That is why waiting feels like warfare, because the enemy knows what is at stake when two ordained souls become one. On this day, October 14, heaven moves quietly through the chambers of your destiny, whispering to those who have ears to hear, "Prepare." Not out of fear that you will miss it, but out of reverence for what is coming. Every delay was divine. Every heartbreak a chiseling, every unanswered prayer a preparation. The pain was not punishment, it was pruning. The waiting was not denial, it was design. For love that is divine is never rushed. It arrives when both hearts have been taught by heaven how to give without losing themselves. The preparation is sacred. It is not in buying rings or rehearsing vows, but in learning how to be whole. For divine marriage does not complete you. It joins two wholes who have already found their completion in God. When your identity no longer depends on who walks beside you, you are finally ready for who will. God never sends your spouse to fix your brokenness. He sends them to reflect your wholeness. So when he says prepare, he means grow, heal, trust, and dwell deeply in him. For only those rooted in his presence can bear the weight of holy love. And as heaven draws near on this day, remember that divine timing is not delayed. It is deliberate. The one you are called to is being shaped even now by the same hands that shape you. Your prayers are weaving threads you cannot yet see, and when the tapestry is unveiled, you will understand why it took this long. October 14 is a whisper of promise, a divine pause that invites you to believe again. Not in fate, but in the God who writes love stories that outlast time. Prepare not with anxiety, but with awe. For what is coming is not a union of convenience, but a covenant of destiny, and every moment of your waiting is sanctified by the one who never forgets his promises. Every divine union begins first with divine preparation. There is no sacred joining that heaven allows without first refining the souls that are to be joined. The hand of God does not weave together two unready spirits, for what he joins must reflect his own glory. Before the divine union comes the holy solitude, the season of becoming, the quiet training in the wilderness where the heart learns to listen, to yield, and to love beyond emotion. Preparation is not punishment. It is purification. It is the classroom of the Spirit where the lessons are written not in words, but in wounds healed by grace. Every disappointment, every delay, every unanswered prayer becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of divine readiness. You do not prepare yourself for a person. You prepare yourself for the promise that will demand a heart capable of eternal endurance. The world rushes toward romance, but heaven waits for refinement. You see, divine marriage is not built upon the heat of passion, but upon the steady flame of purpose. God is not interested in giving you someone to escape loneliness. He desires to give you someone to expand your destiny. That kind of love cannot be given to an unprepared vessel. So he begins the holy work of preparation, sometimes by separation. He draws you away from counterfeits, from shallow connections, from the noise of your own desire. He teaches you patience through the ache of waiting and endurance through the silence of delay. Every lonely night, every unfulfilled hope is part of his crafting. You may not see it, but in the unseen, heaven is shaping your heart for something that will not fade when the first storm comes. Preparation demands surrender. It means allowing God to cleanse you from patterns that once felt like home, but were really prisons. It means forgiving what you swore you'd never release, letting go of who you thought you needed, and trusting that divine timing never fails. The love you are being prepared for will not compete with your peace. It will confirm it. But before you can receive it, your heart must be taught to recognize peace not as the absence of conflict, but as the presence of God. In divine union, peace is the language of heaven's approval. And preparation is how you learn to hear that language clearly. Many think they are waiting for the right person, but often heaven is waiting for them to become the right person. You cannot attract what you are unwilling to embody. God will not give you a spouse of strength if you still live in the shadows of fear. He will not entrust you with a partner of faith if your own faith still trembles at every silence. Divine preparation shapes you into a mirror of what you pray for. It transforms you from a seeker of comfort into a bearer of covenant. In this process, God tests not your desire but your depth. He asks, can you love when unseen? Can you trust when unknown? Can you remain faithful when no promise seems near? Only those who have learned to walk by faith and not by sight can be trusted with a love that mirrors heaven. The waiting is sacred. Do not despise it. It is in the waiting that your roots grow deep enough to sustain what is coming. You must become grounded before you are gifted. Many rush into marriage seeking relief from the ache of solitude, but divine unions are not built upon escape. They are founded upon purpose. The person God prepares for you is not an idol to replace his presence, but an instrument to reflect it. That is why he must come first, always. You cannot prepare for divine marriage while neglecting divine intimacy. The closer you draw to God, the clearer your discernment becomes, and the easier it is to recognize what is from Him and what is merely an echo of desire. In divine preparation, God often teaches through separation. He allows certain doors to close, not because He is cruel, but because He is kind. He knows that premature connections will only wound the destiny He's trying to protect. Every heartbreak becomes holy when you realize it was a rescue in disguise. He removes what distracts, isolates what refines, and disciplines what must mature. In this sacred silence, you will sometimes feel forgotten, but heaven is never still. The potter is shaping your heart, smoothing your edges, aligning your vision. He is building endurance, patience, and compassion, qualities that are not taught by ease but by experience. Divine preparation also involves divine pruning. The Father removes branches that bear no fruit, not to harm but to heal. He strips away what hinders the bloom of divine love: pride, jealousy, impatience, fear. You may weep in the pruning, but every tear waters the soil of your future. When love finally comes, you will understand why it took this long, for you will meet it not as a beggar of affection, but as a steward of covenant. The one God sends will not complete you, for you will already be whole. They will complement the strength that obedience has built within you. Divine love cannot thrive in dependency. It flourishes in two souls who have learned to depend first on God. There will be moments in preparation where God feels distant, yet this is the mystery of divine training. He teaches you to trust His heart even when you cannot trace His hand. The silence is not absence, it is intimacy without noise. You are learning the rhythm of heaven's patience, the sacred art of abiding. Every day of waiting is a rehearsal for eternal faithfulness. When you finally walk into the divine union ordained for you, you will not be anxious or uncertain. You will carry peace, because you will have met God first in the waiting. Do not mistake preparation for delay. Delay frustrates the impatient, but it fortifies the wise. What you call waiting, heaven calls weaving. God is intertwining lives, purposes, and seasons in a way that cannot be rushed. To force the process is to fracture the promise. Divine unions are not microwaved. They are slow, cooked in the fire of refinement. The gold of such love cannot be found in haste. It gleams because it has endured the furnace. Every divine union begins in secret. Before the eyes of the world ever see it, heaven conceives it in prayer, in obedience, in surrender. That is why the enemy tries to weary you in the waiting. Because he knows that once the preparation is complete, the union will be unstoppable. Two prepared souls in the hands of God can move mountains, heal generations, and birth purposes that shake darkness. Your preparation is not just for marriage. It is for mission. The union God prepares you for will not only bless you, it will bless nations through you. So guard your preparation with reverence. Protect your purity not as a rule, but as a response to God's holiness. Guard your time, for distractions are the thieves of destiny. Guard your heart, for impatience invites imitation. The true will come quietly, wrapped in peace, bearing fruit that lasts. But you must be ready to recognize it. And readiness comes only through preparation. The divine marriage is the harvest of spiritual discipline. It is the bloom that follows a long season of unseen growth. You may think nothing is happening, but roots are forming beneath the soil of your faith. Trust that every act of obedience, every moment of worship, every prayer whispered in tears is part of the preparation. God is not just preparing you for someone. He is preparing someone for you. And when both are ready, heaven will unveil what it has been crafting since before you prayed your first prayer. Every divine union begins first with divine preparation, because God is not simply joining two hearts, He is joining two eternities. Such a union must be forged in faith, anchored in truth, and refined by fire. The waiting, the pain, the growth, it all becomes holy when you see it through the eyes of eternity. So stand firm in the season of preparation. Let patience perfect you, let holiness cleanse you, and let hope sustain you. For when heaven finally says, "Now," everything will make sense. Not because it was easy, but because it was divine. When God ordains a marriage, it is not the meeting of two hearts, but the merging of two callings into one eternal mission. Divine marriage is never merely about companionship. It is a covenant woven into the tapestry of heaven's design, a union through which eternity itself echoes. When God joins two souls, he is not merely creating harmony in affection. He is constructing a fortress of purpose. The divine marriage is not about finding someone to make you happy. It is about finding the one with whom you will glorify God more completely than you could alone. It is a sacred partnership in which two divine assignments intertwine like vines around the same cross, each supporting the other's growth toward glory. The world teaches that love is about emotion, attraction, and comfort, but heaven teaches that love is about calling, character, and covenant. God's ordination is never random. When he designs a union, it is strategic. It carries the fingerprint of destiny. Every divine pairing is formed not for pleasure alone, but for purpose. You are not joined to fulfill a fantasy, but to fulfill a divine plan that has been written in heaven's script long before your heart ever learned to hope. This is why some connections fall apart. They were built on desire, not design. The divine marriage cannot be sustained by passion alone. It must be anchored in purpose, prayer, and purity. When two callings merge, the earth feels the tremor of divine alignment. Such unions birth ministries, movements, and miracles. They become living sermons, visible proof of God's redemptive plan for humanity. The divine marriage is a mirror of heaven's order, where two lives, though distinct, move in perfect harmony, like melody and harmony in a sacred song. This union is not about sameness but synergy. One carries vision, the other carries wisdom, one ignites faith, the other guards peace. Together, they become an altar where love burns without consuming, where worship flows through daily life, where the Spirit of God dwells richly because both hearts are surrendered to the same King. When God ordains a marriage, he first aligns the souls. Before their eyes ever meet, their spirits recognize one another in the language of destiny. That recognition is not based on appearance or attraction, but on divine resonance. It feels like home because it is home, not the temporary shelter of comfort, but the eternal dwelling of purpose. Such unions do not begin with chance encounters, they begin in prayer, in obedience, in divine timing. And because of that, the world cannot understand them. To the unspiritual eye, divine marriage looks ordinary, but in truth, it is heaven touching earth. The merging of two callings is not without challenge. When God brings two anointed souls together, there will be friction, for iron sharpens iron. The union will face tests not to destroy it, but to refine it. You see, the greater the purpose, the greater the preparation. Every storm that comes against such a marriage is not a sign of failure, but proof of its significance. The enemy never wastes his energy on what poses no threat to darkness. When two prepared hearts walk hand in hand under divine ordination, hell trembles. For such a couple does not just build a family. They build a legacy. In a divine marriage, the mission always comes before the moment. Each partner carries a fire of their own, but together they form a torch that lights the path for others. God unites them to demonstrate what love looks like when it is ruled by grace, sustained by prayer, and guarded by truth. Their love becomes a reflection of Christ and his church, sacrificial, steadfast, sanctified. In this sacred partnership, submission is not weakness, it is worship. Leadership is not domination, it is devotion. Forgiveness is not occasional, it is continual, because divine unions mirror divine mercy. When two callings merge, heaven rejoices because its order is being fulfilled. The purpose of divine marriage is not simply companionship, but co-laboring. It is two souls walking together toward a single divine assignment, each carrying a different part of the same vision. One may be the voice, the other the vessel. One may sow in faith, the other may water in prayer. Together, they cause heaven's purpose to bloom upon the earth. That is why the enemy seeks to corrupt love, to distort the reflection of God that marriage was meant to display. But when God is the center, the union becomes unbreakable, because it is not built on human strength, but on divine covenant. The merging of callings often begins with the surrender of individuality, not the loss of identity, but the laying down of ego. Divine marriage does not erase who you are, it refines who you are. It sharpens your gifts and expands your influence, because now your purpose is multiplied by partnership. One voice can speak truth, but two in harmony can shake nations. One heart can love deeply, but two hearts in unity can demonstrate heaven's love to the world. This is the mystery of divine multiplication. When God unites two obedient souls, their combined impact becomes eternal. But before this merging comes, God ensures that both individuals have first learned to walk with Him alone. He cannot merge two callings that are not yet anchored in personal obedience. You must learn to hear His voice without interference, to serve without recognition, to love without demand. Only then can you be trusted with a union that carries eternal weight. The strength of divine marriage is not found in the vows spoken at the altar, but in the prayers whispered in private. It is not sustained by romantic words, but by spiritual warfare, intercession, and mutual surrender. Divine marriage is a ministry before it is a relationship. It is a covenant where two souls agree to serve God together through every season, through joy and sorrow, through plenty and lack, through laughter and tears. Their love becomes a testimony, not because it is perfect, but because it is persistent. When others see their faithfulness, they see God's. When they forgive one another, they reflect heaven's mercy. When they stand united through trial, they preach the gospel without speaking. When God ordains a marriage, He is writing a new chapter in His story of redemption. Each couple becomes a living parable, a tangible demonstration of divine love. They raise families not only of blood but of spirit, children of legacy, not merely lineage. Their home becomes an altar, their table a place of communion, their laughter a hymn of gratitude. They walk through the ordinary carrying the extraordinary presence of God. Every act of kindness, every prayer shared, every burden carried together becomes part of their mission. The merging of callings also carries responsibility. Divine unions are watched by heaven and opposed by hell. Therefore, humility becomes their shield. Prayer becomes their language. Love becomes their armor. The couple must continually return to the source. For the moment they drift from God, they drift from each other. Unity is sustained only in communion with the one who united them. The divine marriage thrives not by effort alone, but by abetting. Their strength is not in each other, but in the God who holds them both. There will be seasons when one carries the other, when faith falters, when weariness whispers. Yet even then, the mission remains. They are bound not by feelings, but by faith, not by fleeting joy, but by eternal purpose. Their covenant is a lamp in the darkness, a reminder that love consecrated by God does not fade, it matures. Each trial becomes a testimony, each victory, a vow renewed. Their story becomes a sermon for generations yet unborn. When God ordains a marriage, the heavens bear witness, angels guard it, and the Spirit breathes through it. It becomes a seed that grows into legacy, a partnership that not only changes lives but alters destinies. The merging of two callings is the merging of two eternities, the blending of divine assignments into one eternal harmony. Such love cannot be explained. It must be lived. And when the world beholds it, they will know that God still writes love stories, not with ink, but with lives wholly surrendered to His purpose.